Brewster here with a new episode of Chordplay. This is the Chords of Jerry Reed, and it was earlier this year I put together a 3-for-all for Jerry looking at some of his licks, and since that time I've had a ton of requests to feature more of Jerry's music, so now we're going to hit some of his chords and rhythm work. And Jerry's definitely an essential musician and guitarist. You know, his career started somewhere around 1955. He released 35 studio albums, like 2 live albums, 6 compilations, 59 singles, which is very impressive. 4 of those songs were #1 hits. So definitely a legendary musician, but also an actor. Stars in the film Gator, Smokey and the Bandit 1, Smokey and the Bandit 2, The Water Boy, also TV shows like Alice and Mama's Family. Totally, Jerry Reed was a legend. So when I noticed the request pouring in for more of Jerry Reed's music, it made me very happy because I've been a Jerry Reed fan since I was a little kid, like single-digit year little kid. Before I even played guitar, I knew who Jerry Reed was. And I remember watching TV with my dad, back in the day, watching shows like Hee Haw and other shows that had music. And Jerry would occasionally pop up, playing guitar, singing and telling jokes. And people in the studio audience were laughing. My dad's laughing. I'm sitting there laughing. And I was like, who is this guy? And next thing I know, we're watching Smokey and the Bandit. And who's in that with Burt Reynolds? Oh, yeah, it's Jerry Reed. And then later I'm watching, reruns of Scooby-Doo. Lo and behold, there's Jerry Reed on Scooby-Doo. And you got to think of those guest stars on the old Scooby-Doo. I mean, you had Sonny and Cher, or like the Harlem Globetrotters, Don Knotts, and Mama Cass, and people like that. And yeah, Jerry Reed. The music and chord-based examples in this episode came from 5 Jerry Reed albums, and he's got a lot of material. Like I said, he released 35 studio albums, so there's a ton of music there. And I basically selected songs and parts that are a little bit easier to play, because I'm not going to lie, Jerry Reed's guitar style is very advanced, very hard to copy. And, there's like counterpoints and contrary motion and all these partial chords and implied chords and really weird like rhythmic quirks and stuff. Definitely a very difficult guitarist to tap into. A lot of finger style too, you got to remember that as well. And he did favor playing a nylon string quite a bit. He did play electric guitars too, Tellys, he's like an old Peavey and stuff. But he did seem to really love, nylon string acoustic guitar stuff. And on almost every single album he released, there's an instrumental, or multiple instrumentals on certain albums. But, he really would let the guitar kind of take center stage and just strut his stuff. And some of those instrumentals are mind-blowing, where it's like, how did he do that? But anyway, just a heads up. The opening, that's the song Tennessee Stud from the album Me and Jerry, which is Chet Atkins and Jerry Reed together. And they actually recorded 3 albums together. That's a brilliant record. The other 2 are great too, but I really love Me and Jerry. And Tennessee Stud's actually tuned to drop D, and he's doing this. Something like that. So it actually starts with this. So that's basically part of a D minor 7 right there. Think of the bar chord, but you're doing it like that. And then you're also playing that low E, which is tuned to D. And then you hear this bass line, that A to G to F. And keep in mind we're in drop D, so that's a G, and that's an F right there. So you're hearing that bass note kind of move. That, but he's doing it like this. So kind of a bounce to it. And then just start banging on that low E tuned to D. And then you answer that with this. So that's the open G, and then slide that E to F sharp and then catch that C right there. Like that, and then this G to F with the low E open, then the open B with that low E, and then grab that F and kind of bend it up a half step, like that. So it's kind of tricky. Because you're doing 2 things at the same time. Next up's the song Mule Skinner Blues from the album Georgia Sunshine, and this is in standard tuning and something like this. Something like that. So it starts with the open A 7 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then you do this. So it's the low E open, that G to A on the low E string. And then this D to C to the open A on the A string. And that's tricky right there. It's a weird kind of finger twister. And then he's moving to A minor technically. So he's kind of targeting that, and you're going to kind of bend that C. It's not quite a half step, but you're kind of, playing with that minor to major third right there. And then end with that A right there. It's a tricky little riff. Eventually you'll hear it change. It goes to the 4 chord D. So right there it kind of walks up that C to C sharp and then into D major right there. And then it's like a D6 to D7 and you're kind of moving that B to C. And then back to the riff. It keeps going. It goes to the 5 chord and it keeps jamming. That's a great song, but definitely a kind of a sneak peek into Jerry Reed's, guitar universe right there. Next up's the song Navy Blues, which was actually a B-side to an early single that Jerry released before he'd even released, his first album. And it does appear on the compilation Oh What a Woman, and we're in standard tuning still, and Navy Blues is so cool, like this. Something like that. So it starts with this, and we're in A7 right there. So that low E, G to the open A. And then he's playing A7 like that, grabbing that D and that C sharp, and he's also playing with the 6, that F sharp. Like that. And that walk down F sharp, E, D to C. Goes to the 4 chord D, and you're going to do a similar thing in D7 and D6 right there. Back to A7. And then E7 right here. And right there you're doing E7. You're also grabbing the minor third, that G natural. And then G, G sharp to A. Then you hear this A5, A flat 5. And then open up that D string, and then it takes you back to the start. Next up's the song Bluesland. This came from the album Better Things in Life, and this is really cool, like this. It keeps going. I'm going to stop right there, but we're starting with this B minor, and then it's B minor 7 over A, and then it's a E over G sharp right there, like E7 7 over G sharp, and then E major, and then a G7 like that, and then an F sharp 7 flat 13. So super jazzy, you know, progression there. B minor 7 over A, E7 over G sharp to E7, G7 to that F sharp 7 flat 13. So that's the first part. And then this part. That's really, you know, seductive, like Pink Panther or something. That's what it reminds me of. But you're sliding into this to B sus2 in the beginning, and then you're going to open up that A string and do that little pull off to the open B. And then that's tricky right there, grabbing the G sharp with that A, grab that B to the open D, and then like that. So that's weird, really weird. And that last little part there. And then he does or something like that. But one more time through that. It's really tricky, but it's so cool. Going, but that's so wicked, so cool. Next up's the song If I Promise. This came from Jerry's first album, The Unbelievable Guitar and Voice of Jerry Reed, and there's some very interesting chord tonalities at play here, like this. One more time. D minor, and this real crafty kind of harmonic minor implied idea there at the end. But D minor in open position, and I was using a pull off to that high E open. Jerry might have actually plucked or picked that note, but I was using a pull off there. And then D minor over C, D minor over B, and then B flat major like this. And then the open A. That's really weird. And then you're doing kind of like an A7, and then it ends with, which is so cool, but also really weird too, like that. So one more time all the way through it. Last but not least is the song Swingin' 69, and this came from the album Better Things in Life, and this is the beginning of the song, but it has this turnaround bluesy sound to it, which is so cool. And rhythmically it's really interesting because he's just floating right over the time, like this. You know, so cool. One more time. Do here, I'm going to break this down 2 chords at a time, partial chords at a time, and we're going to start right here. So think of that like a G over B, and then that C with the high E open. So there's the first 2, and then this, that C sharp and G, play the open D and slide this A to B like that, and then you're grabbing that D and E flat, and then E and E, B flat to A, right there. So walking through it. One more time, 2 at a time. And then this is really interesting. Like that. So that's the first half. And then put it together. That's really tricky. And then it goes to G7 right here. And then C7, right? Like that. And you're sliding that C sharp back to C. And then that open D with that C, B flat to the open G. And then the G right here. Like that. And then end with D7 right there. So such an interesting guitar part. Really weird and all over the place, but I love that kind of stuff like this. Play that at the next blues jam or whatever. Everybody will turn and be like, what was that? Because it's so cool. Alright, that's going to wrap this episode of Chordplay with the Chords of Jerry Reed. And like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I'm a huge Jerry Reed fan. He's one of those players for me that has that very distinct, human element and sound. Also people like Jeff Beck and Joe Walsh and Billy Gibbons and players like that. Like, it's them. As soon as you hear, one note or the beginning of the song, you're like, hey, that's totally Jerry Reed. And you can tell with the quirky licks and like the fingerstyle stuff and, interesting, tonalities, and there's like bluegrass and classical and all these different things going on, in his music, which is so cool. And there's just something about him, definitely one of a kind, sorely missed on the scene, I think, in today's world. But just one of those, unique players that you can definitely dive into and get lost and get inspired too. So much brilliant guitar work and music in Jerry's universe. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.